All right. What's going on, y'all? It's your Don Israel. This is another episode of Lit, the premier platform for all things lit, literary, swaggy, and otherwise. Today's guest, one of my dearest friends, my nearest and dearest. Met her at the MFA program at the New School in 2014. She was flyed in. She's even flyer now. Sweetest girls in the world, and I mean this as both a double entendre and as a pun. Jessica Siskin, BKA, better known as Mr. Krisp, is in the building. Thank you for coming, girl.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Lit.
I'm so happy to be here.
We gotta jump right into it.
All right.
Tell us what you're wearing. She came in fly today.
I came in.
Don
told me to come swaggy.
You gotta stand up. You gotta stand up.
You really? Okay.
You gotta do the.
So I'm wearing. I think I'm a little wrinkled from my Uber ride over here, but I'm wearing Siskin. Which is a very cool brand. You should definitely follow them on Instagram and purchase their products. And
gotta catch the
That's
whole
my
outfit.
look.
You gotta back up. You gotta back up a little bit.
I'm gonna step and repeat now.
So, you gotta step and repeat the swag, because this is a swag you want to do over and over again. You get because you get the whole outfit. So
whole look.
Take us through the shoes. The shoes start.
The shoes, yeah. So these are my leopard shoes. Can you see them?
Yeah. Boom.
I wear them with everything. Jean Vito Rossi.
Ooh.
And then we have my Siskin comfortable silk pants and my little Sank ruche top. Smocked. It's comfortable. I love it.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
And so basically, everyone who knows when you come on the show, you got to come swaggy. But this is something I did not have to tell you, Jessica.
No, you did tell me though, and it added a little bit more pressure to this whole operation. But
and then a beautiful thing is she comes here bearing gifts. Her new book, Treat Yourself, drops August 8th.
Yep.
On Tuesday, so she brought some early copies of it, and she also brought a gift. What's the gift?
I did. What do you think the gift is?
Of course.
I mean,
it's a Krispie, big ass Krispie.
I always come bearing Krispies.
Look at that.
So this is look at that.
Boom.
Look at that.
Always blessing the God.
So lit.
Always blessing the God. So Jessica, tell us, how'd you get started?
How'd I get started with Mr. Krisp?
No, we're gonna do the writing first.
So
this is lit. So we're gonna do the writing first.
How did I get started writing?
What was the first thing before you were a writer? You're a reader. Tell us the first thing that made you want to be a writer.
So I always loved reading growing up, and when I would skip my homework in other classes, the work that I would always do would be my reading. I always considered myself to be a reader, and I always loved writing. When I was in second grade, I wrote an essay about my teddy bear, and it got selected for a contest, and it won. So that was really exciting. And I always loved writing. It always came super naturally to me. It never really felt like work. But I went to college and I studied art history at NYU.
NYU, yeah.
I studied mostly art history and psychology and things like that, and went straight into fashion. I always wanted to follow in my mom's footsteps, and I always really loved fashion. So I figured that I would have a really great fashion career like my mom. And I've been working for my mom for about 5 years. I was managing the department store sales for a brand called Elizabeth & James. It was a high-end women's contemporary brand. And as the brand, when I first started working at the brand, I had a lot of opportunity to be involved in creative work. So, it was a small team, and although my role was in sales, I was able to weigh in on design. I was able to weigh in on merchandising, but as the business became more and more successful and our sales grew, I really needed to focus on sales. So before I knew it, my job was a super business-focused job, and I found myself really missing that creative outlet. And at the time, I was going through a breakup, and I would sit at my desk. Someone had introduced me to Modern Love in the New York Times, and I'd never really looked at essay before. That's not a genre that I was even familiar with, other than I thought of an essay as something that you wrote in school to answer a question. But I read Modern Love, and I was like, oh, this is a form that feels natural to me. And I started writing essays at my desk at my fashion job. And after a few months, it was my favorite part of my day. And after a few months, I decided to sign up for some creative writing classes. So I did non-credit classes at the New School, and I did that for about 4 semesters until my teacher was like, you need to leave. Like, you can't keep taking this class over and over.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to come get my MFA, but I couldn't leave my job, and I couldn't participate in...
Now, when you say couldn't, could you not really, or did you not want to?
Well, I think that, in order to I was a little bit older at the time. I was 27.
Okay.
And the idea of not working at all and just being in school again felt like a step back for me. I was used to, making my own money and having agency in that way and not depending on my parents as I had when I was younger. And the idea of just going back to school and not having a job wasn't something that I was comfortable with, and it also wasn't something that, the people who were paying for my education, my parents, were comfortable with.
Nah, we're not doing that. I'm going.
So I, and working in fashion, you travel a lot, and your hours are really unpredictable. So to be able to participate in an MFA program, which, the one that I wanted to do at the new school is at night, and it's very frequent, and there's no flexibility within an MFA program. Like, you really need to be there all the time. So it wasn't going to work. But around that time, I had started experimenting with Rice Krispie treats.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of a story that I'll read to you from my book a little bit later.
Okay.
But that's sort of how I got here.
Okay. So, but which writer brought you here? Which writer would you say brought you here?
So it brought me to this table right now.
Yeah.
So I think that, when I did start taking the non-credit workshops, something that really stuck out to me was Sloane Crosley. I started reading her essays, and there was one essay in particular, The Pony Problem, that I still believe is the perfect essay.
Okay.
So
now when you describe what is in Jessica Siskin's world the perfect essay? What does the perfect essay do?
So the perfect essay is engaging and surprising. And
I like that.
Self-contained.
I like that.
So if you have time, read The Pony Problem.
Yeah.
I think you could actually find it online. It's an excellent essay.
Mm.
She sort of goes in. It's really cool. She opens by saying that, when you live in New York City, you're constantly thinking of ways that you can die while you're out. You can be hit by a bus, or you could just not come home one day. And what would happen if your parents came to clean out your apartment and found something really strange, and what they'd think after you were dead. And it sort of then goes in. I don't want to spoil the whole essay for all of you.
No, but there. Like sometimes people need a good end.
Yeah, so
and I think that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so it's and basically the big secret that she wouldn't want her parents to find out when they came into her apartment and she was dead was that under her sink she has a lot of different pony figurines.
Oh wow!
And the reason she has these pony figurines, which is the way that she reveals this in the essay is just so incredible. But the reason she has these pony figurines is because whenever she's dating a guy, and they say, "Oh, can I get you anything?" and she'll say, "A pony," and every single guy then thinks it's clever to on their next date bring her a pony. So she has all of these different plastic ponies.
Wow!
And she starts to sort of examine whether, they're bringing her these ponies because she's dating a certain kind of guy who's the kind of guy who's thoughtful enough to bring ponies. And I won't ruin the rest of the essay, but the way that she ends it is just stunning, and it's one of my favorite essays. So I'd say that before I started the MFA program, that was, I still consider that to be the perfect kind of essay.
Right.
But I've become a lot more of a critical writer over time, and I think that the person who really brought me into the kind of writing that I consider to be my kind of writing is Leslie Jamison.
Ooh, okay. And
who I know you love too.
Oh, I love her. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
You have her book.
I do have
Read
her book with me.
Give us some opportune, some signature Jamison. And why you reading the Jamison? I'm gonna set these Marduces up for us.
You do.
But, read, baby.
So this is my copy of the empathy exams. I've never written so much on a book. There's writing everywhere. I actually lent it to a friend, and I was like, so
published by Grey Wolf.
And she signed it. How cool is that?
Hey.
Published by Grey Wolf. She wrote me a nice little note. But this is a passage from an essay called The Grand Unified Theory of Female Pain, and it is one of my favorite essays, and this is one of my favorite passages, and I will read it to you.
Read that.
I was once called a wound dweller. It was a boyfriend who called me that. I didn't like how it sounded. It was a few years ago, and I'm still not over it. It was a wound I dwell. I wrote to a friend. I've got this double-edged shame and indignation about my bodily ills and ailments. Jaw, punched nose, fast heart, broken foot, etc., etc., etc. On the one hand, I'm like, why does this shit happen to me? And on the other hand, I'm like, why the fuck am I talking about this so much? I guess I'm talking about it because it happened, which is the tricky flip side of Sontag's critique. We may have turned the wounded woman into a kind of goddess, romanticized her illness, and idealized her suffering, but that doesn't mean she doesn't happen. Women still have wounds, broken hearts and broken bones and broken lungs. How do we talk about these wounds without glamorizing them? Without corroborating an old mythos that turns female trauma into celestial constellations worthy of worship, thy ravished hair, which adds new glory to the shining sphere, and rubbernecks appear at every lady breakdown. Lady Breakdown, a flavor of aristocracy, a gaunt figure lurking lovely in the shadows. The moment we start talking about wounded women, we risk transforming their suffering from an aspect of the female experience into an element of the female constitution, perhaps its finest, frailest consummation. The old Greek Menander once said, "Woman is a pain that never goes away."
Damn.
He probably just meant women were trouble, but his words work sideways to summon the possibility that being a woman requires being in pain, that pain is the unending glue and prerequisite of female consciousness. This is a notion as old as the Bible. I will greatly increase your pains in childbirthing. With pain, you will give birth to children.
That was heavy.
Boom.
And that's Leslie Jamison.
That's Leslie Jamison.
That's how she gets it in.
her.
So there's so many things I want to unpack about that section and talk about how
long do we have?
we have time, and we're gonna get to it. So the whole idea of like being a woman means being in perpetual pain, and I want to know how you, as a woman who writes, who lives, who creates things that bring so much pleasure, how do you feel like that is true for you, and two, if it is true, how do you sublimate that pain?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think that what strikes me the most about this passage and about this book in general, and mainly about this essay, which is the final essay in the book, is that it's not so much talking about female pain as it is talking about how, as a culture, we deal with it.
Right.
I think that, for example...
And when you say we, I just want to be sure on the pronoun,
yes.
like how do you imagine this we, in this particular context?
Our culture.
The whole culture? Okay.
Yes, our culture in general.
Okay.
The same culture that, that is so stringent about gender and so threatened by anything that threatens their gender identity. And,
Yeah.
So like not necessarily me and you, but the culture that we've grown up in.
No, but I definitely would see myself as part of this culture.
Yeah, I think we all.
Yeah.
I think that the way we deal with female pain is, obviously we all have pain, male or female, but the genre, memoir, for example, that often deals with trauma or often deals with pain or often deals with sort of those like feminine personal interests. We've started to recently have discussions around the importance of the personal.
Right.
But, like Chris Kraus, the personal is political, like that whole thing. But I think that the way we deal with female pain as a culture isn't really fair. It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't as a woman. If you're going to talk about your pain, then you're a wound dweller. And then if you're not going to talk about your pain, you're going to suffer in silence.
Right.
And so I think that, women are seen as people who complain, or, I am always being told, not always, but occasionally being told that, feminists are just whiners.
Right.
And that kind of thing. But there is a lot of pain involved in being a woman in this culture and just in the daily life of being a woman. And a lot of people don't even recognize it. But I know that, I walk into a room as a woman and I'm not taken half as seriously as a man who walks into the same room.
Right. Well, specific men, right? So
specific men.
Yeah, because,
but you know what? I hate this not all men thing. Because
I'm not saying like this is not even a yes all man. I think that there's also gradients in a hierarchy of manhood as well. So like as a black man, I walk into a room, like granted I might get more respect than you because I'm a man and you're a woman, but depending on which room I'm in, you might get more respect because you're white.
Right.
So it's like there's that intersectionality that's always at play as well.
For sure.
And I think that like what's interesting about the Jamison essays, the way it opens with the first essay being about these tests in which the patients have to act like someone who has a symptom, and then the doctor has to be able to tell based on the acting of the person playing the patient what symptoms they have.
Right.
And what was interesting about that is like the real empathy doesn't come from the doctor being able to identify with the patient. It comes from the person who doesn't have these symptoms to identify with the person who's sick.
Right.
So if one person is incapable of being empathetic, then the person can't do their job. Right. And I thought that was immediately like the thing she was asking with those essays was, how, like, what are you willing to risk for empathy? Because I think there's a lot of like language being dispatched now about like, I'm an empath. Everyone's calling themselves an empath, and it's sort of like everyone calling themselves woke, everybody calling themselves a feminist, as opposed to that's something like you sort of earn. That's something you earn, And I really feel
it's
like
something that you don't talk about if you actually are. You
Yeah.
don't have to say I'm empathetic.
Yeah.
If you're actually empathetic,
Right.
you just need to be empathetic.
And I'll be honest with you, like being empathetic is like that shit is inconvenient as fuck.
Yeah.
Like because it's like you have to think about other people.
Well, we all have
It's
our
like,
own shit to worry about,
Yeah.
and then worrying about other people's shit. Yeah, it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
But
No, and
Yeah.
so it's not saying like, you know, I don't want to do it. I think I'll be honest, I don't want to do it, but I think what's more important is do you commit yourself to doing it?
Right.
Because there are people who talk about doing all the time, but they're like not committing themselves to the actual work. Because when you think about the work, it's like it's ugly, it's
Right.
dirty, it puts you're always in a place of vulnerability, because part of being empathetic is like not sort of wanting to cash out on the sort of like emotional. Sorry, we got flowers on the set.
it's lit.
Yeah. But no, like, so like when anytime I hear those conversations, it's not like I've learned to like sidestep the feeling of I have to defend myself, and more of like I'm a part of this conversation and I attack as well.
You also can't do everything. Like
Yeah,
you can't,
yeah.
you know, like you can't be supportive of every cause. I wish I could, but you can't do everything. You can't be everything to everybody. And I also,
Right.
and I said this too recently, but you know, like one of my most favorite sayings that I picked up recently is you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yo, that's
So
true.
you need to protect yourself first, and then you can protect others. But
Mhm.
like in terms of empathy, I mean, listen, it's important, and if empathy's not natural for you, then it's important to sort of question why.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, I think that he was Robert Polito. So this book won the Grey Wolf Prize,
Yeah. He was still judging.
and
at that
Robert
time.
Polito, who is one of my favorite people, I think he said something. He said, yeah. So he was describing the way that Leslie Jamison wrote as he quoted someone else, and he said it's thinking against oneself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important in sort of recognizing any.
Wait, put that in context. Thinking
Against oneself. I think it can be taken here as, you know, she throughout this book is questioning her own thoughts.
Right.
Repeatedly, and questioning her own reactions, questioning her own feelings, and I think that relates to what we're saying about empathy, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're not feeling empathetic, like think against yourself, like consider why. And
Right.
I think it's just this book definitely helps you to reflect. I mean, there was a review that said this book will definitely make you a better person. I'm trying to find. Oh, here it's on the front. Mary Carr. Leslie Jamison has written a profound exploration into how empathy deepens us. This riveting book will make you a better human. It's
Right.
crazy. I haven't looked at this book in like 2 years, and it's like
It's
haven't put it down.
Yeah. And but I think, you know, what's interesting about literature is that the assumption is, and this is like a very American sort of capitalistic thing, that's things outside of ourselves will make us a better person, as if like that work isn't partially ours or
Right.
like wholly ours. Like
Well, your
you can read
responsibility,
this
right.
book, and so there's people, you know,
Right.
that will
This
read
is not
this.
a self-help book.
Yeah, and it will be a book where like I read the empathy exams, I'm fixed, as
Right.
opposed to like, but are you actually putting in practice
Right.
what this book is challenging you to do?
Well, that's like, I mean, you've written my work. You've read my work that I've written on my disdain for the self-help industry.
Yeah.
And I think that, and that was a really long time ago, but I think that this, like, self-help is DIY,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's not, and so, like, this type of book that, yeah, like, you know, this is the book. It's not going to tell you how to be a better person,
Mhm.
but in reading it and thinking against yourself and examining it, I think
Right.
you ultimately will become a better person.
I think, but that's, to me, that's what I also feel like sort of goes missing in the dialogue about like things that ask you to critically engage. It's like, no, you have to actually critically engage.
Right.
It's like a therapy, right? Like, it's like,
Right.
I can't help
Nobody
you.
can fix you.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be willing to do that work yourself. And so it's, for me, something that like I think needs to be said more of, like this, you know, like, and people, oh, this book will change your life. It's like, no, you have to already kind of want to have your life
Right.
change for this to come in. Because if I read that at
Right.
16, I would have been like, I probably wouldn't have got through it. I'm like, what the fuck
Right.
is this? Threw it out. But it was like I was at a place in my life where I was ready to receive, capable of being
For
challenged.
sure.
Like, yeah, like,
That's like everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Timing's everything.
So there's an essay in there. This is a great transition. Called I think the saccharine, the sweet.
Yeah, in defense of saccharin, I
Yeah,
think it's called.
The saccharin. That's how you pronounce the word.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think so. I don't know. I think so.
We'll leave that to
Yeah, we'll
everybody
look
else.
that up later.
But it's about sweetness.
Yeah.
And it's about the ways in which, and that's
Look
yeah. So
at you with the
yeah, I'm
smooth
nice.
transition.
I'm getting better. We're getting better every episode. So
You're doing great.
transition
Yeah.
these deep thoughts of pain How do you sublimate this into joy and pleasure? Yeah.
So I actually, I sort of have a perfect response for that, which is that Mr. Krisp, honestly, if I'm telling you the honest truth, which I will, because you're one of my best friends here, Mr. Krisp really came out of a super painful experience. I was going through a breakup, and I had friends over, and it was around Valentine's Day, and I made a Rice Krispie treat because it was the only thing I knew how to make, and I made it into a heart shape. And then I took a knife and I cut it down the middle like a broken heart because I was really sad. And this happened in like February of 2012. And then almost a year later, in December of 2012, I was invited to a potluck birthday dinner with my friend Amanda. And we didn't know what to make because neither of us knew how to cook. And Amanda was like, oh, well, we should make one of your cool Rice Krispies treats. Like, you made that heart that time. I was like, you're right. She was like, our friend's a surfer. Why don't we make a surfboard? And so, and like, this is like the story I'm going to tell you, like, is a little different from the story in the book, which it's still true, but I'm going to give you a little more detail right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's
so good. I Googled Rice Krispie treat surfboard because I'm a millennial and I Google everything.
Yeah.
And there was a recipe with food coloring in it. So I added the food coloring to the Rice Krispie treat mixture, and I immediately had this aha moment, and I was like, I need to make a Rice Krispie treat cheeseburger. Like, that's just what needs to happen in my life.
Yeah.
So I went home the next night, I made the cheeseburger, I assembled all the pieces together, I screamed out loud because I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I took a picture of it, posted it on Instagram, brought it into work the next day, and everyone, I broke over 100 likes for the first time.
That's definitely goals.
It was goals at the time. It was 2012. Like, there was like, that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
I brought it to work, everyone ate it. And then what really kept me going, and I'll be 100% honest with you, is that my ex liked the picture on Instagram. And this is someone who like was dating someone else by then, and like, had just completely like forgotten about me, and all of a sudden I felt seen again by this person. So I didn't really think that if I kept doing it that he was going to continue to like my photos. He didn't even follow me. I think it was a fluke thing. That picture had gotten 100 likes. It probably showed up on his Explore page or something.
Yeah.
But for the first time in a while, I felt really good after having all of these people, not only all these people validate it, my ex. Like, that felt really cool. So I kept doing it. I kept experimenting for over a year. I made all different types of treats. I made bagels and lox, ice cream cones, all different foods like s'mores, a watermelon. And then about a year later, I was feeling really bad. I like still, it had been almost a year. I was still really depressed. Not necessarily so much about this guy, but I was still single and I was unhappy and I felt aimless in my life. And I decided that maybe I'd feel better if I started a separate Instagram account for these treats that I was making.
Yeah.
And I did. And, now I'm sitting here with a book. So, and with so many other amazing accomplishments.
And in the background.
So, yeah.
Of the finish that thought.
So out of this like really difficult time in my life involving a breakup and just sort of general aimlessness came this really incredible thing that if at any other time I might have had this idea wouldn't have worked because of their Instagram was just becoming a platform where people were creating content just for the purpose of creating content. That wasn't a thing before the fall of 2013, honestly.
Yeah.
So I just got really lucky, and it was just this confluence of events that brought me here.
Yeah. So talk about the name.
About Mr. Krisp,
the actual name of the handle.
So I never really saw this becoming what it is, and I just thought it would be a fun thing for me and my friends. And one of my favorite movies is Sister Act 2.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's an
I actually watched it like a few.
The musical sequence at the end of that movie. Like, I listen to that song.
Which
all
one
the
is
time.
it? Are we talking about the contest one?
Your
the
teacher
one
says take off your robes.
Oh, that one. Because there's another
Yeah.
one like in the credit section where it's like the white. All right, cool.
Yeah,
cool,
that's
cool.
the one. So I love that movie, and the bad guy in that movie who's trying to shut down the school is named Mr. Krisp. And my sister and my mom and I watch that movie all the time, and we would always say Mr. Krisp because there's a point when they say that in the movie.
Yeah.
And it just like came to me. I was like, oh yeah, that's cute. And I wanted it to have a K.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be spelled out Mr. And Mr. Krisp wasn't available. It's some Italian guy who like loves his cat. But I put the underscore in the middle, and I had this handle, and now here I am. So I'm Mr. Krisp, and I'm constantly being asked, why Mr.? Because as you know, I'm a very vocal feminist,
Yeah.
But it's definitely.
What is your answer to that? When people ask you why Mr. Krisp,
I tell them the story I just told you, and I don't think
Does that usually satisfy people?
Yeah, it usually does. I think that, listen, most people that I speak to are a lot less focused on gender politics than I am, so I can usually
that's
satisfy.
what I'm saying, because you know, when you get into that game of, and it's not a game, but it's like when you're not playing the game, you start realizing how many people are.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, oh, you say you were feminist, but it's like, but mister, like, you can't do male Krisp at all. Like, it's just,
but I also think that, you know,
that.
Nobody can make you feel insecure about something you're not insecure about. So I'm like very comfortable with the Mr. Krisp moniker, so nothing can stop me now.
Hey, that's a good. So, talk to me about how the book comes about. So you start Mr. Krisp what year?
I started Mr. Krisp. So I started making the treats in December 2012, but I started the Instagram in October 2013.
Okay.
And I left my job. So I immediately started getting orders. I left my job at the end of 2013. I just didn't come back after New Year's.
Okay.
And I was applying to the new school for my MFA at this time. So I was admitted to the new school in fall 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was admitted before that, but I started in fall 2014. Met you August 2014. I still remember what shoes you were wearing that day. They had stripes on them. And then I started. So we started school in like September, right?
September, yeah.
And probably sometime around November, I had someone reach out to me on Facebook, and she was like, "Hi, I'm a literary agent, and I think that Mr. Krisp could be a great book. Do you want to talk?" And I was like, "Sure." And we got on the phone, and she was very smart and very nice, and I was like, "This sounds really cool. I'm busy. I'm doing my MFA and I'm running this business. Like, now's not a good time." She was like, "No, I don't think you understand. Like, you got to act on this book while you're getting press. Like, you're getting a lot of press right now." And I was getting a ton of press right then, because that was around the time that I did the Kim Kardashian Paper Magazine cover, and I got picked up on Perez Hilton and BuzzFeed and Mashable and like everywhere. People thought that was the craziest thing ever. So she kind of just like stalked me for a little while and was like, "No, you really need to put together this proposal." And I finally was like, okay, like during winter break, like let's just throw it together. And
2015.
Yeah, like 2014 to 15, yeah. And we threw together the proposal and then went out to publishers. And I actually remember on a call with a publisher, you know, a big part of, I don't think I ever told you this story, a big part of what they want to know when you're pitching a book is comp titles, like other books in your space and other books that you can compare.
Oh yeah, everybody,
yeah. And I'm, you know, pitching this Rice Krispie treat cookbook, and they're asking me about books that, you know, resonate with this topic, and I literally am like, well, The Empathy Exams by Leslie Jamison and The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson, because like because well, I'm thinking of this as a little bit of a cross-genre project, and like, and this was a little bit later on, but yeah. So, how
did that conversation go over?
I mean, the thing is, like, either of us could make that work. Like, we can make people believe that there's a connection there, and I truly believe that there's a connection there. But at the end of the day, this book is not cross-genre; it is a recipe book. But or kind of a crafting book, so maybe it is cross-genre. But I did really want to maintain that element of, you know, the first class that we took together at the new school was that Craig Teicher seminar, and that was just
that's how we became friends. I'm sorry, because and the whole time talking, I'm like, how did we get so close? It was the Craig class, Yeah,
so like blurring the boundaries of what any kind of book is, and I did want to not take the recipe format too seriously, and like obviously these recipes are perfect recipes, but my head notes are kind of irreverent, and the project choices in the book are kind of weird and surprising. So I definitely kept that MFA training in mind while at the same time creating this book that has definitely mass appeal. So the book, we shot the book at the beginning of thesis semester, which was January 2013. We did it over 10 days in a studio, and we shot, I think it was like 40,000 photos, because we had my hands going, and we had a photo being taken automatically every 3 seconds. And so that's how you get all of these step-by-steps, which somebody at my publisher had to go through, like 40,000 photos and select which ones might work. And then I got choices, and then I got to pick, and I wrote around. This is actually unusual. Most people write a cookbook first. They write the recipe, and then they shoot into the images. I actually did the opposite. I shot the images and wrote around them. So it was really painstaking and a really long process, but
We here.
It was really fun.
So tell us the title. Was it, who comes up with the title? Because I know a lot of writers don't get to come up with their titles a lot of times.
I actually don't remember if it was, I think it was my editor.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It could have been me, it could have been my editor. I don't know. But this is actually, you know, when I was first toying around with ideas of what to call Mr. Krisp, one of the ideas I had was treat yourself. Or my treat. I was definitely playing with the word treat, but I ended up going in the Krisp direction. Not sure who came up with the title, but I love it.
No, it's a good title, and I think that, like, and we talk about this a lot, and about how you reconcile this this is like all in the conversation and wheelhouse of what feminism is like what makes a feminist, right? And no one really has that answer. I think a lot of people have better language for what feminism isn't as opposed to what it looks like. And we talk about, you know, the fact that, like, you know, there's something about being a woman who makes treats that's like very like, this isn't subversive in any way. You're like capitulating to what's expected. But like you say, you know, the essay, like, you know, by definition, which means to attempt. I feel like every Krisp you do is a sort of essay.
It is.
It's like an attempt.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is. But I think that, you know, going back to what you just said before, I think that Mr. Krisp is a feminist act. I think that I'm taking this sort of traditionally domestic kitchen space and I've turned it into a theater for my business and my sort of empowerment, and I have flipped it on its head, and I'm cooking, but not for anybody. I'm selling these things, and it does feel like a feminist act to me. And then also just the book design itself, I'd always, before I even really understood why, I would read books that I think fall into the category of like chick lit or beach reads. And I always understood that felt like a derogatory term to me, but I never really understood why at the time when I was younger. And as I started to understand that people have disdain for chick lit because they have disdain for women, and they think that a lot of women's writing and women's work or writing for women is seen as frivolous and not as important or not as serious. I always was aware of that distinction, and I remember I'd always say before when I first started writing, that I wanted to write a book and I wanted to make it pink. And this was going to be a novel. At the time, I'd never written a word of fiction in my entire life, but in my head, I was going to write a novel, and it was going to be a pink chick lit novel, but it was going to be really good, and people weren't going to be able to call chick lit anymore. And like, this is a weird idea.
I'm thinking about the gum when you say that.
So chick lit.
Yeah.
It's like, this is such a weird thing, but you know, now it was really important to me that this book was pink.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people sort of dismiss these pink books, and
you want people to reckon.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pink book, and this is a fun thing, but it's also like serious. Like, I did this.
So let me spin it. How do you reconcile? And this is the thing. Like, I write on Instagram. You know that.
Yes.
And a lot of our conversations, and even this show, is about like, how do we break out of the very tight bubble and the vacuum of literature? How do we make our words, our attempts, accessible to people who don't know they exist? But if they did know, like, I think that what's truly subversive about what you do is the fact that it has reach, right? Like, you know, like, I think the tragedy of that analogy when people say, not the analogy, I don't know if it's an analogy or a metaphor or whatever, but if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, and it's like, people debate those merits. I'm like, it does make a sound. The sad part is no one hears it, right? And I feel like, you know, there are so many brilliant books, like, in that, you know, workshop, that seminar we took, like, one of the most important writers who I have in my life, like, is like Hilton Alls, and that came through that class, and that book was relatively unknown to so many people.
He said he sold like 1,000 copies or something.
Right. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I didn't want to be someone who was doing very important work for people who I knew, had they read it or had they been capable of accessing it, it would change something in them or help them change something for themselves. But then there's that other hurdle, that wall of, well, accessibility is sort of like the the antithesis to what literature is.
I have so much respect for people like Hilton Als, and I have so much respect for people who, go about literature the way that you're supposed to go about literature, but it's not working.
No, I know.
Like, and so I think that there are certain people that I've met throughout, ever since we started our MFA program, who really see themselves as literaries and want to be literaries, and they're our age and they're our generation, and they're following this same tired literary path that a lot of other people are following in, and they're getting published in small literary journals, and they're posting pictures of books on their Instagram, and it might work for them, it might not work for them, but for me and for you, I think that I struggle with this a lot because I definitely feel that because I am this Rice Krispie girl, and because of how I look and how I present and how I speak, sometimes I'm not taken seriously, and I for a moment really wanted to be this serious literary, and then I started to realize nobody's gonna care about that from me. And I think that there are so many people that we've met in this program who are not doing the literary path, who are pursuing other things, and are sort of embracing who they are outside of what they think a serious writer should be. There are some writers on Instagram who I don't know personally who have written really successful books, and all they do is post pictures of books and post pictures of poems, and it's you do other things. I know you. You're definitely out doing something fun. You are definitely in a cool place. You are definitely not so highbrow all the time. And I think it's this highbrow literary thing that is no longer working. And we had a conversation recently about, and I think what your mission is here is to kind of connect literature with everything else in the world.
With a mass.
Books don't exist in a vacuum.
Because I think about so much music that I would have never heard of had there not been an apparatus for music to reach, out to people. I always think about the fact there's this famous scene in the Temptations movie where before Berry Gordy releases music to the public, he has record executives sit around and they play a record, and he says to them, if you had your last $5 and you had to buy this record or a sandwich, which would you buy? And it was wait, what? You're not talking about this song and another song. It was if you could eat or listen to music, which one would it be? And if they picked the sandwich, he would not release that song.
Wow.
And it was that sort of expectation that the music had to be food
better
for the soul.
Food, right.
Exactly. And so I think the expectations of what a success is in literature creates it tells the culture where it needs to go. So if we're saying, when someone gets told, oh, there's no market for your book, as opposed to how do we reach your market, I feel that question turns on something different in someone's mind.
Right.
Of no, there's a market for your book, we just have to do the work to find it.
Right.
But with that comes capital, it comes resources, it comes and it just comes with a certain vision of wanting to see people that you don't see in the world. And that's why for me, I champion what you do, and we have these conversations about the thing of now you become the Rice Krispies girl. I feel a lot of your writing, this is a form of writing, and this is a literature, but when you write in the traditional ways, your writing is just as good, and my thing is I'm gonna be really interested to see how you come to reconcile these things over the course of your career. Because even who did you do the Rice Krispie for? We had the class, and you did the Rice Krispie for one of the books we had.
Matea Harvey.
Yeah, Matea Harvey, and her book was mixed media.
Yeah.
She had pictures in there. She broke a lot of rules.
She did.
And yet that book was able to finesse a very fine line of what's literary. And I think that language comes from the people who have power, who get to describe what literature is and isn't. And so I think that over time, I think to continue to fight for a space that doesn't exist is how the space ultimately exists, right? So, yeah,
I think this is so interesting. We've had this conversation before because publicly, it's 2017. We're all super Googleable, and publicly, I want you to Google me, and I want you to see fun, colorful pictures of Rice Krispies and my book cover and things that are bright and fun and happy. But at the same time, I have essays and work that you're aware of that are about really heavy, serious topics gaslighting, sexual assault, I've started to write really serious things, and obviously they have a little bit of levity because it's me and I'm writing it.
It's
but
life,
it's this but this idea that somebody's gonna Google me and they're gonna be looking for Mr. Krisp, and then they're going to get slammed with this essay about the systematic discrediting of women. And what then are they going to make of Jessica Siskin? And it's a really interesting question that I still haven't had a chance to answer. I'm not going to not publish that stuff because of this. I'm probably not going to publish it anytime soon because of this, because I'm busy. But I'm not going to not talk about the things that matter to me.
Right.
And with Retouched, it's the same thing. So
yeah, and talk to us a little bit about Retouch, because I'm wearing one of the hats.
Yes,
Women are not crazy.
Women are not crazy.
And this is like I said, this is from the student of Hilton Hall's camp. Like, he broke this whole new person in. I was always looking for the exit of like the misogynistic patriarchal thing, and he provided a vestibule out, like with his books and his writing, his thinking. So like, yeah, this hat. And what is Retouch? I know you have the book.
Yeah, so Retouched, so Retouched is my new project. I am taking t-shirts that have, we'll get here in a second. Okay. I'm taking t-shirts that have sexist, misogynist, otherwise patriarchy reinforcing language and imagery on them. Okay. So whether that's a Hooters t-shirt or a Playboy's t-shirt or a t-shirt that says something obnoxious about women, a t-shirt that displays domestic violence, which is like a genre of t-shirt that I didn't know existed before I started this project. Bikini inspector, so objectifying things. And I'm taking these sexist t-shirts and I'm embroidering over them with feminist messages. Yeah. And what my objective is here in creating these t-shirts is that, I would wear a feminist t-shirt and I would have someone say to me, like, why do you need to be a feminist? Or like, what's the point of feminism? Yeah. And it's like, ask me what the point of feminism is when I'm wearing a Hooters t-shirt that says the future is female on it. Right, it really creates the perfect juxtaposition for people to think about their participation in patriarchy and how they can overcome it. So with that said, here's my lookbook, which Yadon modeled in. So we have an old Playboy cover and it says Retouched over it. And I don't know if the camera's going to be able to grab any of these. But like, for example, here's a Hooters tank that says "Not Your Baby" embroidered on it. Yeah. And then here, like, for example, here's Tinkerbell, a little ingenue. Feminist Killjoy. This t-shirt that actually my mom is modeling says, "Life's a bitch, then you marry one, and then you die." And so embroidered over that is "The future is female." So Yadon modeled a bikini inspector tee. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. But in launching this, I was definitely concerned about Mr. Krisp. And you read people like Lindy West, who is that? Lindy West is a really brilliant writer. She has a column for The Guardian, and now actually she has a column for The New York Times, and she has a memoir out called Shrill that is absolutely excellent. And a lot of what the memoir deals with is the abuse that she has received from the internet for being an outspoken feminist. Yeah. And I thought about that. I'd just come off reading the book probably a couple months before I came up with the idea for Retouched. And the idea of, receiving that kind of abuse on the internet is scary to begin with, but then thinking that it could be detrimental to my other business that I worked so hard to build is definitely something we're thinking about. But so far, so good. I also think the audience for Retouch and the audience for Mr. Krisp, although there is some overlap, are a little bit different. Yeah. So I'm not too worried. But like, reconciling the fact that both of those things are me, that I am the happy-go-lucky crispy person, and I am also the feminist t-shirt maker, and I am also the writer who deals with serious topics.
It's consistent, and and it's not even in that like that I don't have the word for it, but that it's on brand, very on
brand is such a joke at this point.
Yeah, but it's sort of reductive, like it's saying that everything you're doing is with the intention to capitalize.
But that's what social media has done to people, right? Like, people used to be able to contain multitudes. Yeah. And now it's about who you are and how you present yourself on social media and what.
And it's who people think
people
you are.
People are curating themselves.
Yeah, it's who I know people expect this of me, so
and you
I'm
can
going
be multiple things.
Right, and I think that's the more interesting thing about identity is how these seemingly competing identities all come to the surface. Now, the thing I wanted to ask you, with the shirts a little pricey, right?
Yeah,
we're $125.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think about reconciling that price point with people who might want to engage and might look at this as this is another sort of barrier that keeps people from fully participating if they wanted to into this culture, right? And or like into
Yeah.
something that you're creating, right? So like, you know, and let's be honest, like, you know, you're a white woman and you come from privilege,
For sure.
and so you're pricing something. So how are you negotiating that?
Yeah, so this is definitely something I thought about.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, at first I was really looking at Retouch as an art project.
Okay.
I was not necessarily intending to sell them.
Okay.
I had the idea for myself because all I wanted was a shirt that said Feminist Killjoy, because I feel like in every conversation I participate in, I am in some way becoming a feminist killjoy. Like, I will ruin all the fun all the time. And I wanted that shirt, and I actually bought iron-on letters and a sweater, and I started ironing the letters on it. As I was ironing them on, I was like, this would be so much more meaningful if I could lay this over a picture of the Little Mermaid, because that's my favorite thing to be a feminist killjoy about, right? Little Mermaid. Everybody loves Little Mermaid. Ariel's so sweet, whatever. She literally gives up her voice and her access to her entire family for a man. That's why are we showing that to little girls?
Or you know, and also boys too. Like I think that, and this I wrote a post about this yesterday on Facebook. I gave a talk to a group of girls at this high school in Harlem. It was supposed to be boys, but the boys didn't show up, so it was all girls. And the thing that happens to me often when I give talks to schools is it's always assumed that I will only be a benefit to the boys in the room.
Right.
As if it, like, you know, value does not translate across gender.
Right.
And so, you know, when I had been talking to them, I told them, I'm like, you know, a lot of times when I'm asked to speak, I'm usually asked to speak to boys. But I really think that is sort of a perpetuation of the like the patriarchal, you know, divisive structure, because it's like, okay, well, who's to say that only girls don't need to see that image? Like, boys are seeing that image, and so
you're 100%
it's communicating to them like, oh, so I have to want a girl who wants to be silent around me.
Right.
So it equally, and so it's the same thing. Assumption with like race things is like only race affects like people of color. It's like, no, race shit affects everyone who's involved. It sends messages, and I think that's why, like, you know, for me, I've been learning more of like, how do I make myself culpable and capable in every situation, right? So it's not like this thing of like, not me. It's like, no, me too. Maybe not to like, and we all do that, right? We look at the person who's spending $100,000 and say, well, I'm spending 100, so I'm not like a spendthrift, but it's like you're spending in the same mind frame as a person at that level, and so we go, well, I'm not sexist because I don't do X, but I'm like, but you do Y, right? So I think that what these messages do, and that's why I even like wanted to be a part of it, is because it's like, you know, for me, it's like, it's not something, I don't see sort of push for equality as something that's on the onus of the people who it immediately affects, right? It's like, no, this affects you also, and it affects you in ways that you may not pick up on, and that's why you make your, like, that's what I mean, you make your body cold. Like, I too am responsible for what happens in this world. Right. So it's like, you know, if a woman wears a shirt that says "women are crazy," it doesn't, you know, you want me to believe that because you're a woman. But if a dude wears it, and I get written off as being gay or like, oh, you just want the girls or whatever. But it's important that we take up not each other's battles, but we take up battles that are our own. Right. And I think that's different. So like for me, and I always told you this, when the thing that I appreciated when you had posted like a Black Lives Matter Krisp, and I had seen like the lack of reaction to it, and it was the people were like, you know, people just, and I have a habit of like going through and seeing like how your Krisp does, and for you to do that, like you didn't have to do that, but then again, like you sort of like you had to, right? Like there's a thing of like, and that's how, like, you know, like men get applauded for things that women do all the time because, well, men don't have to do that. And it's like, no, I think that is what's wrong, is we don't expect as much from one side as we expect from the other. Like, it should make sense for you to do that. Right. For me, it's just cool, as opposed to like, no, like I have just as much responsibility to this message, to these fights, as the person who doesn't look like, you know, like.
Yeah, I think navigating a platform in that way is, you know, it's always a challenge. I want to do what is meaningful to me, right? And so like, and now, I mean, like that, I posted the Black Lives Matter Krisp about a year ago, probably, and now, I mean, ever since Trump's been president, like there's something to make a statement about every day. So, and I can't turn this into a political account, so I'm just sort of picking and choosing where the message.
But that's what I'm saying. But like, I think that everything we do is political. And I think that when you're trying to chase behind somebody like that guy, like you're always going to be behind, right? Because he just moves so fast.
Right. Well, and it's also just misdirection, like everyone,
No, yeah, like he's
saying these things about trans people in the military because he wants to.
He's slighting hands,
right?
From, like, and he's like, it's. I think a lot of people don't give this man credit, and when I say that, I'm not saying that we should be applauding him, but paying a bit more attention and not counting him out as being this stupid guy.
Right.
And I think that that's an unintelligent thing of just saying, oh, he's dumb, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, does he not though?
Right.
Like, if you like, he's in the most powerful seat in the world. He like. Regardless of what we think of him, it's like he's in a position of power, and that could be the mediocrity of like white male privilege, but that's still a privilege, and that's not even a privilege, that's a power he has, because he has the power to take people's health care and create bans left and right. And so like I've spent less time reacting and more time like really trying to see like what is he really doing,
right? And
what is he trying, like if he's saying this, what is he really trying to keep us from hearing, and things like that. So I think that especially with this, and this back to that question, like how are you reconciling like the price point with accessibility? How are you bringing these things together with?
So I mean, as I said, it started as an art project, and the price really, I mean, this is how much it costs to make and sell. Like you're buying a vintage T-shirt. Like usually when you're producing a garment, it's you're making it yourself. This is a vintage T-shirt that I'm buying some of them for up to like $30 to $75 if they're really good, and then to get them embroidered. So it is, as much as it is, a company, a business, and I'm not saying that I'm not profiting off of the concept. But as much as it is a business, I think that it is a concept, and I think that like offering lower price items, like these hats, for example, that would retail for $20, and I am offering a slightly lower price point in T-shirts that are new. So I'm making T-shirts that have double feminist messages on them. So they say like girls, and then the future is female, or that kind of thing. Those are $85, and $10 from each one goes to a charity, most likely Planned Parenthood. We have not sold them yet. We have not decided, but I think that the message itself, like much like like it's something you can participate in. If people started going out and like buying their own Hooters T-shirts and fucking them up and writing on them, I would love that.
Okay, that's cool. So before before you head out, we want you to read something from Treat Yourself.
Yeah.
Let people know what they're gonna be getting into. Where could so jump into that.
So I feel like I already told you a little bit of what I thought about my story, but let's just see. Let's see what I can find here.
Okay.
Oh, here's a good passage.
All right, just jump into that.
All right. For a long time, I thought I was weird because as a kid, I spent a lot of time I should have been spending working or studying making art projects instead. Even into my late 20s, I'd sometimes find myself at work drawing cupcakes and other elaborate doodles on sales reports when I should have been analyzing the data. Instead of following my creative impulses, I'd been suppressing them. Today, I feel so fortunate that I get to share my creative outlet with you in this book and inspire you to exercise some of your creativity in a way that is so much better than the average art project because you get to eat it in the end. Even if you're not the stereotypically crafty type, you'll be surprised at how easy it is to make a really cool-looking and delicious-tasting dessert. When friends come over to help or watch me make treats, they're always shocked by how quickly it all comes together, right? Rice Krispie treats are super fast to make, the ingredients are widely available, and a lot cheaper, and some might say healthier, than the ingredients in so many other desserts. It's also a very forgiving medium. I've made thousands of treats and plenty of mistakes, but I've only had to start over completely like 3 or 4 times. And those were on very advanced designs. Okay, the truth is I got distracted listening to the Hamilton soundtrack. Because I have no professional training, many of the techniques I use are common sense and don't involve a lot of finesse. I mold with my hands, spread icing with my fingers, wash my hands a lot throughout the process, and generally wing it with a lot of details. These are methods anyone can use at home, which is good news for you.
Dope. So I know this was good. The episode is going to drop the day before the book drops. I called it
literally the book drops.
So where can people buy it?
Wherever books are sold.
Wherever books are sold. What's the price point for people?
It is $14.95.
That's a good price point.
Yeah.
That's a good price point.
$14.95.
And some events coming up. I know you got an event at Strand.
At Strand on August 8th.
August 8th, which will be the day after this
at 7
video
p.m.
drops.
So you can buy your tickets on the Strand website, and then.
And what's the event? Are you going to be in conversation?
I'm going to be in conversation with Lucy Fink and Lauren Magenta, who are
I know none of
awesome.
these
I love them. They are both Instagram sensations. Okay. Wow. Okay, Lucy's at Refinery 29, and Lauren is at Spoon University, and they are just my favorite people. And then I will also be in New York at the Dessert Goals Festival on August 20th.
Dope.
So if you want to learn how to make a Rice Krispie treat cheeseburger, that is where to go. And
where can people follow you?
people can follow me on Instagram at Mr. Krisp. That's MISTER_KRISP. And for Retouched, it's at Retouched Tees. One word. TEES.
All right, so before you get out of here, we're going to do the ceremonial.
Let's do it. How do we do this?
So I labeled it Marduce.
Okay.
So what you're going to do, you're going to pop your Marduce open.
I like that sound.
And then it's such a nice sound. And you're going to drink past the leaves, like just at the rim of the leaves. It's
hydrating.
Good. Okay.
I did it.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And I'm going to pour you up.
This is a portmanteau, I just realized.
It's a what?
A portmanteau.
I don't know what that is.
A portmanteau. It's when you combine two words and make one word. So we have the Martinellis and the Duce.
Yeah.
Marduce.
And then you shake it. And hold on, let me. I'm not gonna let you do this alone. You got it.
I'm a little scared.
Oh, come on. All right, you got it. Hold on.
Okay.
To the cheers.
Cheers.
Spoon for the book and for lit.
That's good. Can you take this on the road?
Mm-hmm. That's yours. So, another thing, got gifts. Danny, pass me my black bag right there for being a guest on Lit. These didn't come in for the first episode, but we.
So I'm the first guest to receive it.
You were first guest to receive it.
I feel so blessed.
Hand it to me off camera, brother. Slide it across. Y'all not seeing none of this until this is real. But what we have is, for all guests who come onto the show, we have these dope ass lit pins. So these lit pins,
they're lit.
Yeah, most def. So
I'm so excited.
all the guests get them
for
free
me?
for being lit. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're not on this show, it's gonna cost you $100, but
you should come on the show.
You should come on the show, but you get yours free.
I love it. Thank you so much.
It's all good. It's
beautiful,
all good.
And it matches the Krispie.
And it goes well with everything.
Perfect.
Let's get the Krisp. We about to be out.
Right.
Pass me the Krisp, Danny. So this has been another lit interview.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, most definitely. This is Yadon Israel. This is Jessica Siskin.
It's lit.
And it's lit.